In the summer of 1873, beneath the sweltering skies of northern New Mexico territory, a stagecoach rattled into the dust-blown town of Marrow's Hollow, drawing more than just curious stares as it delivered its lone passenger, a slender Mexican woman named Esperanza Duarte, with weathered boots, a worn satchel, and a presence that unsettled the townsfolk before she even spoke a word. For her reputation had preceded her as a woman who'd survived a massacre, healed with hands that saw too much, and buried 2 white husbands under suspicious circumstances, earning her the whispered title of La Bruja del Norte, the Witch of the North, though her eyes held only sorrow, not malice, and her silence bore the weight of truths too vast for frontier gossip to comprehend. As she stepped onto the cracked wood of the depot, children clutched their mothers' skirts, old men spat into the dirt, and Sheriff Eli Garrett, a Civil War veteran with a permanent limp and eyes sharp as rifle scopes, watched her with the wary air of a man who's seen both miracles and monsters, unsure which one she'd turn out to be. And though she offered no words as she passed him, he felt the hair on his arms rise with a strange reverence, like standing in the path of a coming storm. For there were stories about this woman, stories told in hushed tones around desert fires, of her surviving Apache raids untouched, of healing broken bones with a single touch, of watching dreams as if they were windows, and though none could confirm them, all remembered how her second husband, a celebrated Union surgeon, had collapsed suddenly mid-operation and died with a peaceful smile on his face, whispering her name as he passed. She walked slowly up Main Street toward the old boarding house run by Miss Agatha Bramble, a flinty widow who had buried 2 husbands of her own and believed deeply in fairness, regardless of skin or story, and it was she who offered Esperanza a room without hesitation, drawing glares from the saloon crowd across the way where Reverend Silas Boone, the self-declared moral compass of Marrow's Hollow, sipped whiskey under his breath and muttered about dark spirits and false prophets, quoting scripture with the fervor of a man more interested in power than redemption, while across the mesa, on land that once belonged to Esperanza's ancestors, a mining operation pulsed night and day, sending plumes of ash and acid into the sky, poisoning the rivers, killing the cattle, and causing children's lips to blister from the well water, though the townsfolk blamed it on sin, not silver runoff, and prayed harder each Sunday for deliverance that never came. Esperanza kept to herself in those early days, walking the riverbanks at dusk with gloved hands, collecting stones and fragments of bone, whispering words in the old tongue her grandmother taught her, speaking to spirits no one else acknowledged, and always avoiding touch, for her gift or curse revealed truths when skin met skin, not just facts, but memories, regrets, desires, sins, and pain too private for the world to witness, which was why she avoided everyone but the orphaned girl named Nola, who shadowed her like a stray dog, silent and barefoot and forgotten by most. Since her mother died in childbirth and her father was lynched for a crime he didn't commit, Esperanza fed her and sang to her, and one night when the girl touched her sleeve, gasped as visions of Nola's ancestral past surged into her, the girl's great-grandmother delivering babies in a slave cabin with calloused hands and holy songs, her father praying to see her grow old, and the heavy grief of generations pressed into a single child's shoulders. And so Esperanza took her in, declared her blood if not by birth, then by purpose, and taught her to read the land, feel the tremors of truth beneath lies, and to never fear the stories others told about her, for the world always feared what it could not control. Meanwhile, Silas Boone's sermons grew louder and meaner. His flock swelled with frightened settlers desperate for explanation. As more crops failed, more children sickened, and cattle foamed at the mouth before collapsing in the sun, while the Reverend declared it judgment for sin and pointed toward Esperanza as the source of their blight, calling her Jezebel and snake charmer and warning that her presence would doom them all. And though Sheriff Garrett doubted the man's theatrics, even he couldn't explain why his dreams were filled with fire and drowned voices, nor why every time he touched the Black River near the mine, his skin itched for hours afterward. Then came the night of the fire, when a lightning bolt struck the chapel and reduced it to cinders while the preacher stood outside, arms raised to heaven in defiance, and the townsfolk whispered that Esperanza had called down judgment, though she was seen weeping by the river at the same hour, clutching a rosary made of teeth and sobbing into the soil. The next morning, a child died. Her lungs filled with fluid, and Silas demanded a town trial, claiming witchcraft, insisting Esperanza be burned as the cause of their suffering. And though some resisted, fear ran like wildfire through desperate hearts. And so the makeshift gallows were erected in the square, the crowd restless, the sheriff uncertain, the preacher relentless. But as they dragged Esperanza forward, Nola ran between them and clutched her hand, screaming for them to stop. And in that moment, visions exploded like cannon fire. Images of Silas Boone poisoning the creek with mercury and nitrate under cover of night, of him taking bribes from mine owners to keep mouths shut, of him poisoning wells so the townsfolk would turn to his church for salvation, of him smothering the sick to pad his sermons with tragedy, and all who stood nearby felt the visions too, as if her gift had finally ruptured its boundaries, and silence fell across the square like snowfall, broken only by the preacher's scream as he lunged for her with a knife, only for Sheriff Garrett to shoot him clean through the chest, the first and only time he ever drew his gun in town. The trial that followed uncovered a decade of fraud, of unholy alliances between church and mining company, of cover-ups and contaminated land grabs. And when the mine was shuttered, the water ran clear within a month. The cattle returned to strength, and the surviving children smiled again. Esperanza, though exonerated, refused praise, stating only that her purpose had never been vengeance but healing, and so she stayed in Marrow's Hollow, opening a clinic with Sheriff Garrett's help, teaching Nola to use her gifts for justice. And though some still crossed themselves when they saw her, others left flowers on her porch, and some traveled for days just to let her hold their hand for a moment and reveal what they feared most: truth. And on the first anniversary of the fire, with the chapel rebuilt not for worship but as a school, Esperanza stood with Nola and Sheriff Garrett at the edge of the mesa, watching the sun rise over their town reborn. And in that light, they saw not fear or shame, but a future forged in fire and softened by mercy, where truth walked hand in hand with healing, and the ghosts of the past sang not of curses, but of redemption.